Are you all ready for the class? Today we are going to start a fresh new lesson. Are you all ready? Okay. Now you're all enjoying your lockdown holidays, isn't it? How many of you are enjoying these holidays? How many of you are feeling bored? I know you're all enjoying these days, isn't it? But now you can only talk to your parents. And you can talk to your siblings. You can talk to your grandparents, isn't it? Can you play with your friends? Can you talk with your friends? If you want to talk to your friend, what will you do now? Just open the door of your house. Just come out, take the vehicle, and will you go to your friend's house? No. What will you do? You will take the mobile phone of your parents, isn't it? Then you can make a call to your friends. Are you doing so? Yes, you people all will do the same, isn't it? You will take your mother's or your father's mobile phone and you will make a call to your friends and you will chat with them. Do you know, when I was a child like you, we have no mobile phones. Now we are in the 21st century, isn't it? With the technological advancements, with all these gadgets, what is mean by gadgets? These mechanical devices, we are running very quickly, isn't it? But when I was a child like you, I have never seen mobile phones and we have no mobile phones by that time. Do you know how I used to wish my friends? I used to prepare a greeting card, or even with a paper, I'll write something. I'll write a letter to my friends or a greeting card and then I'll give it to my friend. Not only me. Maybe your parents will also may use the same, isn't it? But now you have all these technological advancements. Before 20 years, there were no mobile phones. People are unaware of this mobile phone. So what people will do? How do they communicate with others? They will write letters. Do you like to write letters? Do you know to write letters? Very good. Do you prefer to talk through mobile phone to your friends? Or do you like to write letters to your friends? Which one you like the most? Personally, I like to write letters. What about you? Do you like to text in chatting applications like WhatsApp, Facebook? Or do you like to write letters to your friends and your family members, to your relatives? How it will be? Just think about that. You are taking a paper and you are writing a letter to your friend. You can also greet them. You can also wish them for their birthdays. How nice it will be, isn't it? Today, we are going to learn something about a small village girl like you. She is writing a letter. A small village girl, she is writing a letter. Do you know to whom she is writing a letter? She is not writing the letter to her friend, not to her parents, not to her brother, not to her sister. Do you know to whom she is writing? She is writing a letter to a famous personality. Do you want to know who is that? Let's see who that famous personality is. Okay. Students, do you know who is this? Yes, very good. What is the name? Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. Have you seen her already? Or have you learned anything about this Sarojini Naidu? Okay, fine. She is an Indian political activist and a poet. She fought for the independence of our nation. She fought against the Britishers. She is also a poet. She was an important figure. She was an important person in our India's struggle for independence from the Britishers. And Mahatma Gandhi has called her as the Nightingale of India. Who called her as the Nightingale of India? Mahatma Gandhi. He called her as the Nightingale of India. Who is the Nightingale of India? Sarojini Naidu. Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. She is the Nightingale of India. Mahatma Gandhiji, he called her as the Nightingale of India. And have you all heard about Rabindranath Tagore? He is also a famous poet, isn't it? Rabindranath Tagore called her as Bharat Kokila. Bharat Kokila is none other than Sarojini Naidu. Rabindranath Tagore called her as Bharat Kokila. Who is Bharat Kokila? Sarojini Naidu. Mahatma Gandhi used to call her as the Nightingale of India. Rabindranath Tagore used to call her as Bharat Kokila. She was born in Hyderabad on February 13. And her notable works, Golden Threshold. Golden Threshold is a collection of poems written by Sarojini Naidu, which was published in the year 1905. Okay? So what we have learned about Sarojini Naidu? Mrs. Sarojini Naidu, she was a freedom fighter and also a poet. Her first collection of poems is Golden Threshold. And Mahatma Gandhiji used to call her as the Nightingale of India. Rabindranath Tagore called her as Bharat Kokila. Students, have you all learned about Mrs. Sarojini Naidu? Okay, here this village girl, this little village girl is assigned to write a letter. Her teacher, her English teacher is giving an assignment to her. So, this little girl is assigned to write a letter to somebody, to a famous person, to know something more about them. If you are writing a letter to somebody, for what purpose we will write? We will write to know something about them, isn't it? How are you? We are asking some questions and they will reply to us, isn't it? Similarly, this little girl is writing a letter to this Sarojini Naidu. To whom she is writing a letter? To Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. This is a work given by her class teacher, her English teacher, to this little girl. Now she is writing this letter. But you know one fact. This Sarojini Naidu is no more. She is dead already. She is no more. Yet this little girl is writing a letter. It sounds different, isn't it? Let's see what happened and how did she write the letter, about what she wrote in that letter. Shall we move on to the lesson, students? Okay. Students, today we are going to learn a new lesson, and the title of the lesson is Dear Mrs. Naidu. What is the title of the lesson? Dear Mrs. Naidu. That is written by Madangi Subramanian. She is the writer. Madangi Subramanian. Shall we learn something more about this writer? Okay. Madangi Subramanian is an Indian writer and educator whose works of non-fiction have been published in famous newspapers like the Washington Post, Quartz, the Hindu, and the Wire, among many others. Her first novel, Dear Mrs. Naidu, bagged the South Asia Book Award in 2016. Madangi's short stories have also received great acclaim and praises across categories. So, Madangi Subramanian is an Indian writer and an educator. She is an award-winning writer. Her first novel is Dear Mrs. Naidu, which is published in the year 2015. Laundry Day is another work written by Madangi Subramanian, which is published in the year 2018. And her latest work is A People's History of Heaven. She worked as a public school teacher and also a senior policy analyst for the New York City Council. Have you all understood? Madangi Subramanian is a famous writer. She worked as a senior policy analyst in New York City Council. And her first novel, Dear Mrs. Naidu, was published in the year 2015. Here, in a village, a little girl is living. And do you know what is her name? Her name is Sarojini. What is her name? Her name is Sarojini, as same as Sarojini Naidu, isn't it? The little girl's name is Sarojini. The first name of both these persons are same. Okay, now on June 10, 2013, she is writing a letter to this Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. And she begins her letter by saying that, you may wonder why I have written this letter to you. Why am I writing this letter to you? You may guess. But my mother did not allow me to write a letter to you. Do you know what is the reason for that? Because Sarojini Naidu is no more now. She is not alive. Yet she is writing a letter to Sarojini Naidu. And the Sarojini, this little girl, is saying, my mother did not allow me to write a letter to you. But do you know what I said to my mother? I said, this is for my school assignment. I have to write. And so my mother gave me permission. So this little girl is saying, if you want to ask permission, if you want to do something, your parents which they are not allowing, we have only one technique, by escaping. What is that? It's for my school assignment. So they will permit us. Now at first, this Sarojini's mother, this little girl's mother, did not allow her to write a letter to Mrs. Sarojini Naidu because she is no more in this world. When this Sarojini little girl starts to write this letter on June 10, 2013. Now, at first she did not allow, her mother did not allow her to write a letter to Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. But now she is allowing. Why? This little girl said this is for my school assignment. And so she gave permission. Now she is start to write the letter. And she is saying, just last week my school reopens. And we have a new miss in our school, in our class. And her name is Annie. New teacher. What is the name of the new teacher? Annie. This Sarojini used to call her as Annie Miss. Annie Miss. Okay. A-N-N-I-E. Annie. This Annie Miss gave them an assignment in the first week itself. If I give you any assignment on the very first day, will you do that? No? Okay, this Annie Miss is giving an assignment to the kids, to the children on the first week itself, and she is saying memorizing is not important. What we people are doing in our school, we will learn from the first till last. We will memorize everything and we will write it in the paper, isn't it? This Annie Miss is saying memorizing everything is not important. Don't be memorize everything like a parrot. What the parrots will do, have you all seen parrots? If we say anything, the parrots will repeat the same, isn't it? So this Annie Miss is saying memorizing like parrot, it is not good. More than memorizing, we have to give food to our heart. We have to give some source to our brain and our heart, which means we have to learn something. Just by memorizing everything without any understanding, is there any use? No. So we have to learn something, and that should be useful for our life. We should learn something. It should help to develop our brain as well as our heart. So what we have seen till on 10th June 2013, this little girl, this village girl starts to write a letter. That is a assignment, school assignment for her. And she is saying, my mother at first did not allow me to write a letter. Why? Because that Sarojini Naidu, she is no more. But I said to my mother that this is my school assignment, so I have to write. My mother gave permission and I start to write a letter to you. This is what she is saying to Mrs. Sarojini Naidu in that letter. And she is saying, do you know how it starts? Just last week our school reopens. A new teacher came to my class. Her name is Annie. I used to call her as Annie Miss. And this Annie Miss is something different than the other teachers. She is saying, memorizing everything is not important. You have to learn something and it should develop your brain as well as your heart. Is that clear? Now, what the teacher said? She said you should not only grow your brain but also you should grow your heart, which means you have to learn some social and moral values. You have to develop your personality. That is what this ma'am is saying, this Annie teacher is saying. Now, this little girl is thinking, if I develop my heart, how will I pass in my examinations? How will I get a job, a good job? How will I get money? Without job, will anyone give us money? No. So she is wondering, she thought of asking these questions to this Annie Miss. But she is not asking, she is not ready to ask. Because she is saying all these elders will hate asking questions. So what she is thinking? She is thinking that if I develop my heart, then what about the exams? How will I get pass mark in the exams? How will I get a good job? How will I build a big bungalow house? How will I make garden around my house? If we need a good and beautiful house, I need money. For that, I need a job. For that, I have to pass in the examinations. For this reason, I came to school. But this ma'am is saying memorizing is not important. Learning or developing your skills, your attitude towards the society, development of your heart is very important. Why this ma'am is saying like this? This Sarojini is thinking. And this ma'am is giving an assignment. What is that assignment? On the first week itself, she is giving an assignment. We have to write a letter to any famous person about whom we want to learn something more. Now, this little girl picked up Mrs. Sarojini Naidu as the person about whom she is going to learn something more. So what is the assignment given by the teacher? The teacher said that you have to write a letter to anybody about whom you want to learn more. So this little girl picked up Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. Okay. Now she is writing, I've concluded. She said the word concluded. She is saying, do you know from where I have learned this word concluded? Concluded means by getting more evidence, by getting more information, I came to an end, I came to a solution. That is what called conclusion is. She is saying, I have learned this word conclusion from so many detective stories. Have you all heard about detective stories? Sherlock Holmes. They are more interesting, isn't it? So, from this we came to know that this little girl is fond of reading so many books. It's a good habit. Will you all follow her? You all have to read so many books. There are so many fantasy stories, fables, detective stories are there, isn't it? You can start reading. It will help you, to improve your knowledge, vocabularies, communication also. So, this girl is saying, I have learned this word concluded from a detective story. But my miss usually used to say that these detective stories are just useless rags. They are just waste. But I don't think so. These are the stories this little girl is saying. She is writing in her letter. Here and there she strike out some words also. And she is saying, Mrs. Naidu, do you know one thing? Both of us have one common nature. There is one difference also. The first is, both our names are same, Sarojini. And the difference is, I am alive, you are not. I am alive, you are not. Have you all understood, students? So what we have learned in this class? What is the title of your lesson? Dear Mrs. Naidu, which is written by Madangi Subramanian. Here a little girl is writing an assignment, a letter to whom? To Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. She is a famous poet. And she is explaining what happened, why her mother did not allow her to write a letter to her. And she is saying something about her animus. Animus is not like other teachers. She is something different. And now she is saying, at last I have picked you as the person about whom I am going to learn more. This is what we have seen today. Is that understood? See you all in the next class, students. Take care. It's time to read the text. Take page number 22. Students, open your book and take page number 22. Dear Mrs. Naidu, June 10, 2013. Dear Mrs. Naidu, I guess you are wondering why I am writing you this letter. Honestly, Mrs. Naidu, so am I. Amma says I am not allowed to speak to strangers. You would think that also meant that I shouldn't write to them. But since this is a school assignment, she says it's okay. Here is a tip, Mrs. Naidu. If you ever want adults to let you do something, just tell them it's a school assignment. They will 100% agree to it every time. Maybe I should start from the beginning. The beginning was last week. Last week I started class 6 and I met our new teacher Animus, who is not like any teacher I have had before. For example, Animus says she doesn't think school should be about memorizing things and saying them back. She says Memorizing things and saying them back makes you a parrot, not a person. She says she wants us to grow our brains and our hearts. When she said that, I wanted to ask how our hearts will help us pass our exams and college and get a job and buy a house with a proper roof and maybe even a garden, which are all the reasons why we go to school. But I didn't. You know how adults are, Mrs. Naidu? They don't like questions. Even though it was only the first week of school, Miss gave us an assignment. Miss says that now that we are in 6th standard, it is time for us to be serious. Every teacher says this every year, but none of them ever gave us assignments during the first week of school. So Animus might mean it. The assignment is to write letters to someone we would like to get to know better. She said that we would pick anyone as long as we explain why. As you have probably concluded, Mrs. Naidu, I picked you. This is the first time I have written the word concluded. It's an English word that means figured out based on clues and evidence. I learned it by reading detective stories, even though our English miss says they are useless rags. I conclude that she is wrong. I understand if you find this confusing, Mrs. Naidu. After all, you and I don't have much in common. For one thing, I'm alive and you are, well, you're not.